Hello, everybody. I hope you're well and welcome back to Voicenotes with Jordan Theresa. How is everybody doing today? Am I tanned? Sorry, the way I was like, don't ask if you're tanned first. Don't ask if you're tanned first thing in the podcast episode. But I'm back from my holiday and I need the approval of other people. I need the validation from other people to tell me if I'm tanned or not. Guys, when I'm telling you, I had the most maxing and relaxing week to the point where I believe I undid all of the bad things that I did to my body during Glastonbury. Oh, I was talking about Glastonbury again. I'm so sorry. One of the key factors of being someone who went to Glasgow is that you don't shut up about it. I understand, but we were all there. The episode that I recorded 2 days after I'd gotten back, or was it one day? No, it was 2 days after I'd gotten back. We were all there. We saw the state that I was in. I feel like I've reversed it. I feel like my body is healed, it's cleansed. Am I about to undo it all this weekend for the London's Big Weekender? How life feels knowing that you're going to go on a massive bender with your friends? Well, yes, but we'll get onto that in a second. Firstly, I want to talk about my holiday. I feel like, to be fair, I'm wearing the wrong top to show my tan. Should I show some stomach? Oh my God, raunchy. But guys, look, I'm tan! Like I am, oh my God, Boots is already going crazy. So I just had the most amazing time. If you don't know, I went to Albania for a week. We flew into Tirana. We only spent like a day or two there. And then we spent most of our time in Hamare, which, oh my God, guys, if Albania has zero fans, If Albania has zero fans, I am fucking dead. I love that place. Beautiful country, beautiful people. Like, I just absolutely loved it. I will say, I will be going back. I think a part of the reason why I want to go back is not only did I have such a lovely time there, but also I didn't do a lot of I didn't go to Camille, which I've heard really good things about. I didn't go to the Blue Eye either, which is like this national park with this beautiful lagoon. Me and Jack, we literally went on this holiday and beached. We just beached and it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. But I do feel like I came back from holiday and I was like, oh, I probably should have done this and I probably should have done that. So next summer, I will be going back to Albania. This is the thing. I am someone who, I like my routines. I don't like change. And I like sort of doing the same. Sorry, but just making so much noise. I like my routines. I like doing the same thing. I like going back to something knowing that it's good. That's why I often do the same festival, basically circuit every summer. It's because I know what I like. So I will be going back to Albania next year because I really want to go to Camille and I want to do the Blue Eye as well. But yeah, I had such an amazing time. My highlight of the trip, I will say, no. So we did literally just beach the entire time and it was perfect. And I will say, and the beaches are beautiful. The water is so blue. Oh, guys. It reminded me a lot of when I did my A-levels. I promise this relates. When I did my A-levels, I did philosophy and ethics, and I particularly focused on philosophy of religion. And basically it was arguments for and against the existence of God. And one of those arguments was called the aesthetic argument, which I loved whipping out in my essays because people would often forget about the aesthetic argument because it was literally only mentioned in a very small section of our consolidation notes. But the aesthetic argument is that God must be real because the world is so beautiful. And there's no way that this could have been an accident. Whether I agree or disagree is a whole other thing. We're not going to get into the philosophy of religion today in today's episode. Another subject for another day. But it was one of those moments where, especially me and Jack went to this beach. Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but basically it begins with an F. And it's a beach where you basically have to scale down a cliff to get to it. But it's so beautiful. And I had one of those moments. Sorry, my cat is actually going crazy. Bruce is, guys. I sometimes wonder what it is like to have a cat that is normal. Someone left a comment the other day saying, I love whatever is wrong with Boots. And so do I. But you know what it is? I genuinely think it is me speaking to the camera, speaking to myself, making a lot of noise, and also this wire sort of swings around a little bit. I think it just sets her off. I don't know what it is. What is up? Like, I don't know why she doesn't like it when I record. It's so strange. Anyway, sorry. It was the most beautiful beach. And I remember I felt like I had to work my ass off to get there because I'm convinced, sorry, we're already covering like a million different topics in the intro of this episode, but I am convinced that I have very poor lung capacity. I know that I social smoke. I know, but I don't think, I mean, any smoking probably damages your lungs, right? But I'm like convinced that the reason why I have very poor lung capacity is because I have had COVID like 4 or 5 times. Like I had very, very bad luck during the pandemic and I caught COVID like 3 times through like not even through, I wasn't doing any crazy socializing. Like every single time it just happened on accident. So I've had COVID a lot and I'm convinced that that's like fucked my lung capacity. So like Jack was like she's on one today. Jack was like leaps ahead of me, bounds ahead of me. And I would like get, and he'd be like stood there waiting. Then I get there and I'd go like, and he'd be like, all right, let's go. So I felt like I had to work really hard to get to this beach and it was so, so hot. We planned to go in the morning, but then obviously we ended up going for brunch. So we ended up like hiking, quote unquote. It was literally only like a 10-minute hike, 20-minute hike. But we ended up hiking at like midday, which is like the hottest part of the day. But like it truly was so beautiful. And it was one of those moments where I was like, damn, the aesthetic argument had a point. Like this is so beautiful. Maybe God is real. Also, when I had to scale this cliff to get to the beach, I finally was using my Salomons for what they were intended for. I was being a good Salomon mom and I actually hiked in my Salomons. Like it's actually so crazy when I take my Salomons out of London. Like I'm like, this is what, like I feel like I'm like releasing them out of captivity. But yes, I remembered saying to you guys that this episode was going to be pre-recorded before my holiday. But I ended up, so I actually hadn't booked a flight home yet. I thought I was going to go to Corfu for a couple of days, but I ended up just booking a flight home like a couple of days early, just because I was feeling a bit beached out. I think I was feeling a bit beached out and I loved every second, obviously. But again, it was one of those things where it's like, I wanted to get back to work, like, because I am so lucky where like, I love my job. Like I fucking love my job. I especially love doing voice notes. You guys know this. So I was like, just really looking forward to going back to work. Also, I want to know if anyone else sort of gets like this, but I am like in a non-media consuming mood at the moment. I don't know what's going on. Like I couldn't sit and read. Sorry, this microphone is covered in cat hair. One second. It's still covered, which is kind of gross, but you guys can't really see it from there. But I'm in like, at the moment, I'm in a bit of like I don't know, like a media consuming funk. There's like, I'm really struggling to concentrate and read. And to be fair, Jack did say, he was like, look, you haven't got your medication with you, so that's probably why you're struggling. But like, I didn't want to sit and read. I don't want to watch any TV shows. I don't want to watch any films. Like, I don't remember the last time I watched a film. And you know what? It's weird because it's like, because I just can't, it's not even like, I just can't bring myself to even choose something to watch. Like, it's like so weird, or to read, or to just, I can't really think of anything to do. Maybe I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I've got like a lot of like errands to run. I've got like a lot of like home bits. Like, you know, when you get back from holiday and you have like 1 million things to do. So maybe I'm just feeling a bit overwhelmed, but like, please let me know, guys, if there are any really good like films or TV shows that you think that I should watch. What I have actually ordered is to try and ease myself back into reading, because I am really, really struggling at the moment, is I found, so I got this book, of course, recommended to me on TikTok, but it's like this, I love physical media. If you know me, you know how much of a slag I am. Sorry, that was a bit vulgar, but but it's true. You know how much of a slag I am for physical media. I get a stacked subscription every month, which is where you get sent an independent magazine. I think it's between like £8 and £12 a month. I can't remember, but you get sent an independent magazine. I love a coffee table book. I just love any sort of physical media. So I went on like a little physical media shopping spree this morning, and I'll probably like show you guys on my TikTok or on my Instagram stories. So make sure you guys go and follow me on there at Jordan Theresa, shameless self plug. And one of those books is a visual book about AI, and it's basically about, though, when you're like when you're on a website and it's like you're not a bot and you have to like sort of fill in, oh, what part of this picture is a motorcycle, or like what part of this picture is a car. Basically this is a visual book about someone who worked in one of those centers creating those pictures, and basically how they were training AI to make those pictures. But it's like a visual storytelling, it's like a lot of pictures. So I'm just trying to like ease myself in, oh my god, trying to ease myself back into reading by getting a picture book like I'm a toddler. But it's true. Like, I don't know what it is. I just can't consume anything right now. But I'm feeling very drawn to a lot of like physical media. I've started following so many people who post their favorite like graphic design things, their favorite like physical media at the moment. So I went on a little physical media shopping spree. So I'll show you guys either on TikTok, Instagram, or like in my next episode, I'll do a little physical media haul. I might start doing like on TikTok, like top 5 physical media. And that doesn't even mean like books or anything. It could be like, CDs, it can be pictures. Like, let me show you guys. I need to show you guys this 1 second. So I went to my parents' house the other day for dinner, and to hang out with my stepdad as usual. And basically I like begged my mum to go to get these big boxes out and look at the family pictures, because we aren't a super family pictures family. Like, we're not a family videos family. We like never go through our family pictures ever unless like it's a funeral. Do you know what I mean? And there hasn't been a funeral, touch wood, oh my god, I don't want to utter these words, but there hasn't been a funeral in the family in a long time. But I begged my mum, like, please can we get this out and have a look? And I love this picture. I posted all these pictures over on my TikTok, but like, let me show you guys if you're watching. I'm popping it on the camera now, but basically it's this picture from, I'm the baby in the picture, and it's my sister and my mum, and it's basically like this picture. I think we were in Brighton, and there is something about it that like, it feels so dreamy. Like, I can't explain. Like, it feels like it has like this real dreamlike quality, and I am like so obsessed with this picture. Like, this is my new favorite physical media of the week, is this like picture of me, my mum and my sister. And also, like, what's so crazy is there was also a Polaroid of me and my sister from when I think I was about like 4 years old in the Polaroid. And it's so funny because I've stuck it on my fridge next to a Polaroid of me and Jack. And I was saying to him, I was like, isn't it, because the Polaroids are the exact same dimensions. I was like, isn't it so crazy that this Polaroid was printed off of me over 20 years ago, and then this Polaroid was printed 2 months ago, and they like look the same, and they like, I don't know, do you know what I mean? I feel like I sound stupid. Like, it's so crazy that my mum probably went to Boots and went and got these pictures printed off. Like, I was a baby, so it would have been like 25 years ago. What? And it's still standing, and it's still in good nick. But yes, I've done a little physical media haul, some visual books, see if that can get me back into like consuming things again, because I think it's like I've got a lot to do, but also I'm like addicted to my phone. Oh guys, it's annoying because it's like I do have to use my phone for work. Like, I have to be on social media for work. If I had any choice, I would not be on any social media at all. And it's the thing, I do actually enjoy being on social media. I enjoy posting on Instagram. I enjoy posting on my Instagram stories, but it's like, why do I post on my Instagram stories and then I'm incapable of not looking at it like 20 times? So yes, this weekend, it's the London's big weekender. By the time you guys are listening to this on Monday, it would have already happened. I spoke about this in my last episode, but just a quick recap. Tomorrow, it's Herbie's quiz, and then we're going to Fold, and then it's the Shakespeare party the next day where I'm making my medieval princess cone hat. I'm going to the arts and crafts store after therapy today. I'm very, very excited. And oh god, you know what is crazy? It's Thursday and I already have pre-night out nerves. Guys, I'm nervous. Like, I'm like nervous to go to Fold because I don't remember like I've been to Fold before. I actually bought a ticket for Fold in like 3 weeks time. I want to see Anne's. Anne's is playing at Fold. The tickets were like 15 quid, and I see, the thing is, small issue, I have no one to go with. And I'm not one of those people who can go to the club by themselves. I'm so sorry. I'm just not one of those people. I can do a lot of things by myself, but I can't go to the club by myself. Like I want to be with my friends. But the issue is that Anne's, it's on the same night as Adam and Trisha's housewarming party, which I will be going to, but then I'm going to cut to go to Fold. And it's also the day before one of my besties, Faye's birthday parties, which I'm going to later because the day after I'm going to a festival with my family. So basically there's no one that I can really ask because I don't want to step on people's toes. Like I don't want to step on Adam and Trisha's toes with their housewarming. I don't want to step on Faye's toes with her birthday and potentially sabotage both plans. So not like it would be sabotaging, but you know what I mean? I don't want people to leave Adam and Trisha's early. I don't want people to arrive at Faye's birthday a bit hungover. So I have no one to go with, but I really want to see Anne's. But sorry, back onto the Fold of tomorrow. I feel nervous. I've got like pre-night out nerves already, but also I'm excited because I know, guys, there is something about the spring in your step that you have after you've gone on a really good night out with your friends. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just like, I remember, because the last time I went to the club, it was actually, I think it was like when I went to, obviously apart from like all the festivals I've gone to, I think it was Fabric like 2 or 3 months ago. And I'm telling you, I had such a spring in my step after I went to Fabric. Obviously, I was hungover the next day, but I had such a spring in my step because I was like, oh my God, like guys, I love my friends. Like I love just going into a sweaty club and dancing with my friends. Like, life is so good. Like low key, it's giving pints, chit chat, and good people. The guy who made Pints, Chit Chat and Good People has no idea the impact that he made on my life. And also, like, everyone clowned him, but he made a fucking good point. Pints, Chit Chat and Good People. Like, that's how I feel after I go on a good night out with my friends. Like, the healing powers of platonic love. I'm very, very excited. And I guess I'll update you all after the weekend's happened, which I'm just so excited. And shall we do a quick outfit of the day? OOTD. Very simple one today. As we all know, I record these episodes before I go to therapy. So if I am wearing something a bit more dressy, I usually will change after because like, look, I like dressing up for my therapist, but not too much. You know what I mean? So annoying. I should have chosen an outfit which shows off my tan better. But anyways, so this top is from Fruity Booty. It is a London-based small brand, and I love this top. I will say it is, because it's cream, it's a smidge sheer, so it's a little bit difficult to choose the right bra. This is like the closest I've gotten to a right bra, and I will say, like, I'm basically stopping traffic with this top. It is so annoying, but this is like a little 3/4 length moment, and it's made of the most beautiful soft material. I think it's either Cupro or Tencel, I can't remember, but it is so, so beautiful. I love it. Little 3/4 length sleeve moment, obsessed. And then my jeans, I've worn these jeans on the pod before, but they are Depop, they are secondhand Gap, and I got them tailored. And my biggest hack for finding a right pair, like the perfect pair of jeans, is to buy secondhand, buy it a size too big and get it tailored. There is something about new Levi's jeans that like don't, or just any new jeans to be honest, where like something doesn't look right, and I don't know what it is, but something just doesn't look right. So that's why I like buying vintage. And yeah, simple, very simple outfit today. And shall we do some thoughts of the week? Yes, I will say these thoughts of the week, they are holiday themed because I had these thoughts of the week whilst I was on holiday. So we've got thoughts of the week of the 15th of August. No, sorry. Thoughts of the week of the 15th of July, 2025. I will say there's only 2 thoughts of the week. Number 1 is everybody is lying about how good neck pillows are. I feel like I'm losing my marbles with the amount of people that I see on flights with neck pillows, sleeping comfortably with neck pillows. And let me tell you, I've tried a range of neck pillows. I don't know whether it's because I'm a bit of a diva with my sleeping habits where like I'm not an on-the-go sleeper. Like Jack, he's an on-the-go sleeper. I am not an on-the-go sleeper. Like I can't do it. I can't sleep sitting up. Like no, like my body doesn't allow it. So maybe that's the issue. But also, like, whenever I wear a neck pillow, I'm like, I'm like, what's we supposed to do like this? No, I just can't do it. But like, I feel like I'm going crazy with like the amount of people that bring neck pillows, even onto short haul flights, because like, I'm like, there's no way it's that good. There's no way it's that good. And I don't know whether it's because I have a long neck. Is it because I have a long neck? Are there special neck pillows for people with long necks? Is there a particular neck pillow that everyone is buying that they think is super good? I even bought a neck pillow for the coach home to Glastonbury, and I remember I put it on, I strapped myself in, and it was no good. Like, what? And then the second thought of the week is, what is more, well, this isn't a thought of the week, it's more of a question. Let me pose a question. What is more of an ick? A man walking on a pebbly beach or a man wearing sea shoes? Because, as you know, in Albania, I was obviously on some very pebbly beaches, you know, Euro summer. And the more time I spent on the pebbly beach, the more I was beginning to warm up to the idea of sea shoes. But I guess the issue is, I think it's similar to my mental block of wearing flip-flops in London, which I have started doing, even though my Havaianas are still giving me blisters. There is a mental block when it comes to sea shoes for me. I don't know what it is, because like sea shoes, they are giving Vibram five fingers. Maybe I should get some Vibram five fingers, but just for the sea. But like, there is a block, but the thing is that I don't know whether my feet were getting weaker or whether I was like wearing down the bottom of my feet with the amount I was walking on the beach. But there was like one point where I was like, I'm gonna have to crawl back to my towel. I was like, I'm gonna have to crawl on my hands and knees. Like, I can't do this. This is so painful. And then, my mum's calling me, 1 second. And the last thought of the week is, I'm going to start pronouncing Rosemary as if it's a double barrel name. There's something so chic. There's something so chic about the name Rosemary. Like, wait, no, I'm obsessed. Wait, someone needs something like, that's perfect drag name. Rosemary. Bring to the stage, Rosemary. But anyway, sorry, yappy intro, rambly intro as usual. Nothing really changes. But in today's episode of Voicenotes with Jordan Theresa, I am really, really excited for this one. Today, we are going to be talking all about affairs. We're going to be talking about affairs. We're going to be talking about cheating. And I want to explore, why do we hate affairs so much? Why, as a society, we live in a society, why, as a society, are we so outraged by affairs? I actually don't think I've ever seen like emotional reactions be like drawn from anything, like such strong emotional reactions, other than when public figures have affairs. And I think that's what I want to focus on, is why are we so outraged when public figures have affairs? Because I totally understand why someone is deeply upset, devastated, destroyed even, when they found out that their partner is having an affair. Oh my God, it's awful. I don't even want to think about that potentially happening to me. Oh no. But also, you know, I completely understand in your own personal life, or, you know, if your friend's partner's had an affair, it drawing an emotional reaction from you. But the rage that people feel when a public figure has an affair, it fascinates me. It absolutely fascinates me. The most recent case studies of sort of public figures having affairs and it causing, you know, public outrage is Ariana Grande and Ethan Slater, John Mulaney, and the Try Guys. Sorry, I had to put a pause, because if I'm saying John Mulaney and the Try Guys, it sounds like John Mulaney is having an affair with all four of the Try Guys. No, I mean John Mulaney separate, and then the Try Guys separate. So, little quick rundown through these sort of most recent affairs, or alleged affairs, I should say. Sorry. So, Ariana Grande and Ethan Slater, it is theorized. So Ethan left his wife, who had just recently had a baby, to be with Ariana Grande. You know, both parties insist that there was no affair happening, that there was no cheating, there was no crossover. But also it sort of raises the question of, what do people consider cheating? Because if, sure, no physical contact happened, but you both, you know, sat and discussed that you had feelings for each other and that you were going to leave your spouses for each other. Also, it's important to know that Ariana Grande also left her husband to be with Ethan Slater, allegedly. Does that count as cheating if no physical contact, if no sexual contact happened? You know, some people would label that as an emotional affair. And should an emotional affair be treated with the same gravity as a physical affair? So that's number one. Number two is John Mulaney, who left his wife and had a baby with Olivia Munn after insisting he didn't want children. I did watch a video about this the other day where apparently John Mulaney did cheat on his wife and get Olivia Munn pregnant. But also, I'm not sure how true that is. And I'm not sure whether it's like salacious celebrity gossip. Like, am I doing up celebrity gossip right now? And then there is the Try Guys, who were it sounds like I'm talking about a YouTube boy band. They were a YouTube group who they got their start on BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed in their heyday, something about 2016 BuzzFeed hit different. But the Try Guys, so one of the members, Ned, left the group after having a workplace affair, which was exposed. And I think something which is important to know about John Mulaney and the Try Guys is what these two alleged affairs have in common is the fact that John Mulaney and Ned were both sort of labeled as wife guys. So I think I think like the title of wife guy is kind of giving like, you know, very like millennial, like doggo. By the way, guys, I went to my friend's older sister's like birthday party the other day, and I believe she's in her late 30s and her kids were there. And I was talking with one of the other like mums who also has a young teenage daughter. And she said to me, she went, "Oh my God," my daughter goes, "Mum, that's so millennial." Guys, the kids, what are they called? Gen Alpha are using the word millennial as an insult at their parents to say that something's old. Gag. Anyways, but, you know, the wife guy thing, it's very like doggo, like millennial coded. But both of these guys were known as wife guys. So as in literally their personal branding was the fact that they were like these devoted, wholesome husbands who were like obsessed with their wives. So obviously when they turned out to like leave their partners or to have affairs, it obviously disrupted their personal image, which I think, you know, it made the affair more severe. It increased the severity. The stakes are higher when you're a wife guy who leaves their wife or cheats on their wife. But also, you know, this outrage towards affairs and cheating, it isn't anything new. I think that people think of like cancel culture as something of, you know, the current modern time. But if we look at sort of the celebrity cancellations of the 90s and the 2000s, they were very often related to affairs. Ethan Hawke, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, which we will be, you know, circling back to. But I will say that this moral outrage, it seems to have intensified in the past 10 years, I feel. And this is backed up by studies in one of my sources, which is about the sociology of women's attitudes towards affairs. The writer cites a study which is far less women now would take back their partner if they cheated or had an affair compared to 20 years ago. So our opinions on affairs and cheating are definitely hardening in the last 10 years, but also I don't know whether it has intensified that much or whether social media is just amplifying it. You know, because we're scrolling on our phones, we are seeing each individual person outraged by an affair rather than if 20 years ago, if we wanted to read about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's affair, we could just, you know, open a magazine and discuss with our friends. Obviously, you know, we have so much more exposure, so much more access to other people's opinions that it does feel like people are more outraged when really nowadays we have more of a way to publicize our opinions than 20, 30 years ago. Now, obviously, with getting into today's episode, I'm going to have to do a disclaimer. Obviously, people who listen to voice notes, you know that with this episode, I'm not trying to condone people that have affairs or cheat. I am not trying to, or rather, I'm not trying to, you know, discuss the harmful effects of having an affair or the emotional damage that comes with having an affair. I'm not trying to be reductive. I'm not trying to sort of dismiss it or sort of brush it off. I obviously know that, you know, being cheated on, somebody having an affair, it's like, it truly is like one of the most hurtful things that another person can do to you, especially because that person is your partner. They're the person that, you probably love them the most in the world. You probably think they love you the most. So to have them betray you in that way, it's one of those things where like it is a bit incomprehensible. You can't really put it into words. But also I think that it's important to explore why we are so outraged by affairs outside of the emotional hurt that they cause. Because of course, a part of it is that emotional hurt, but there's definitely something more there. Because like, think about all the other things that people do to each other that hurt each other's emotions. But there's something about affairs and cheating that it's just people grab onto it and are so outraged. And I'm so fascinated to explore why. Just because I'm trying to explore the why doesn't mean that I condone this behavior. And I want to make that very clear because, whenever I discuss affairs and cheating a lot, and whenever I do, people do accuse me of being dismissive and people do accuse me of condoning affairs. And again, I think our attitudes towards affairs and like our attitudes towards people who discuss affairs like me, it's very representative of how black and white we are like sort of within our culture right now. I think that this sort of black and white perception is absolutely influenced by social media. Social media, I've said this many a times before, but it is the place where nuance goes to die because we live in a very short form content economy. Tweets, there's a maximum of 1,000 characters. We're swiping through TikToks, which sure they can be 10 minutes long, but most of the time we don't watch for longer than a minute. We've got Instagram stories. Everything is getting shorter, it's getting more concise, that there isn't space to have nuanced conversation anymore. Especially when we think about what content algorithms reward. Algorithms tend to reward content which performs best, and the content which performs best is going to be digestible black and white content. And in that sort of, algorithmic short form mess, that's when nuance gets lost, right? So it is difficult to have these conversations. I think that we are living in such like a black and white era. We're living in such like an unnuanced era. But I hope that with listening to this episode, you understand that I'm not trying to condone this behavior. I'm not trying to, be reductive of the amount of hurt that is caused. I just want to explore why as a society, we are so outraged by affairs and cheating. And I do actually want to focus more on affairs rather than cheating, because affairs seem to draw more of a visceral reaction from people than cheating. In fact, I actually think leaving your partner for someone else, even if no like sort of like sexual or physical, things happened, rather it was almost like what some people would label an emotional affair. I would say that draws more of a reaction, more of an emotional reaction, and draws more outrage than if someone just cheated. And obviously, I think cheating and affairs can be equally as hurtful. But I think that people feel more outraged by affairs because there is that emotional element. And I think that, me and my girlfriends, where we sat around, discussing, would you rather your partner cheat on you with 10 people or have an affair with one person and leave you for that person? And me and my friends have all agreed that we would rather someone cheat on us with 10 people. So there is a difference between cheating and affairs. An affair is always cheating, but cheating isn't always an affair. An affair, obviously we all know what an affair is. I'm not going to get into it, but it's usually a fairly long-term relationship with another person. It's either extramarital or it's what's the word? It's a relationship which is taking place at the same time that somebody else is in a monogamous relationship, which is why it probably feels more hurtful, and that's why it draws more outrage, and it draws more of a visceral reaction out of people. We have always, as a society, we live in a society. Sorry, I literally cannot say as a society without saying we live in a society. But we have always had a public fascination with infidelity, whether it's an affair or cheating. So what really I remember recording this episode is, did anyone here have a long history with the TV show Cheaters? So I do fear that this is going to be a pretty individual experience. I'm not sure if anybody else experienced this, but when I was younger, my mum was obsessed with the TV show Cheaters. If you haven't heard of the TV show Cheaters, I'm actually not sure if it's on now, but I watched it in the mid 2000s, and it is basically, it's sort of that Jerry Springer Maury, it's quite tacky, but basically it's about this private investigator who catches people cheating. So he has someone come to him and say, I think my partner's cheating on me, blah blah blah, and then they send out a private investigator to spy on them, and then what they do is they do a sting operation where they bring the partner with them and they drive up to the place where this person is going every week to this motel to have an affair with this person, and then the partner confronts them. They're like, what the fuck are you doing, bah? And then they start fighting. It's crazy. I have a long history with the TV show Cheaters, so we've always had a public fascination with cheating, and apart Cheaters the TV show aside here, a fantastic case study is Tiger Woods. Firstly, before talking about Tiger Woods, I feel like I have to say, what an iconic name. Tiger Woods. He was actually destined to be famous, but if you don't know who Tiger Woods is, which it feels kind of crazy to say that because I feel like Tiger Woods was such a central figure in my childhood. But also a lot of people that listen to this podcast, some of you guys are young. Some of y'all are young. Some of you guys are teenagers. Not that many of you, but a few of you are teens. So some of you guys may not know who Tiger Woods is, but he is regarded as one of the greatest golfers of all time. He is a fantastic golf player. Do I know anything about golf? No. But my stepdad used to be such a golf stan, and he loved Tiger Woods. So at what some would argue was the peak of his career, he was exposed for cheating on his wife with multiple women, allegedly over 100 women, including sex workers and porn stars, and the fallout from this scandal was insane. Because obviously, again, I feel like I have to say, not condoning his behavior, but if we look at the fallout and the public reaction, firstly from an anecdotal perspective, anyone that was a child during the Tiger Woods cheating scandal will know how reported it was. It was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere, to the point where, as I think I was around 8 years old, no, maybe older, maybe 9 or 10 years old, when Tiger Woods was exposed for cheating on his wife with multiple women, I felt like I had been cheated on. I would like to say I was 10. I was 10 and I wasn't even a fan of golf, but it was so reported. It was everywhere. He was scorned for this behavior that I felt like my whole world was crumbling because Tiger Woods cheated on his wife. I can't explain it. And the fallout from this, because the thing is, I can only remember the fallout from my, 10-year-old perspective. But when I was looking at the Tiger Woods Wikipedia, so the fallout from the scandal was insane. So he took an indefinite break from professional golf. Essentia, AT&T, Gatorade, and General Motors all ended their partnerships with Words. Gillette and Tag Heuer suspended advertising featuring Words, and Golf Digest suspended Woods' weekly column. I would like to say that, being dropped by multiple brands, being suspended from their advertising, this type of sort of treatment is usually only saved for celebrities that have been accused of serious crimes. I'm not saying that what he did was right, but what I am saying is that he was treated in the same regard as if he had committed or been accused of a very serious crime. Cheating on your partner isn't illegal, and I know that there's some people that argue that cheating on your spouse should be illegal. No way, Jose. I am so sorry. That is a take that I do not agree with at all. I know that some people argue that it's a breaking of a contract, but no. No. Privatization of love. And again, this isn't me condoning affairs at all, but what I'm saying is that I don't agree with criminalizing loads of things. I'm not really pro-criminalization. And obviously I'm pro-criminalizing, serious crimes. But I feel like criminalizing affairs and cheating is a bit batshit fucking insane. But So a lot of like the theories that I've seen bouncing around online, which is a theory that I agree with, is that, the reason why Tiger Woods' cheating was so amplified by the media and he was scorned so much to the point where he had to really rebuild his career in professional golf. Like he had to start his way from the bottom again because his reputation was so harmed by his cheating scandals. Tiger Woods was a black man succeeding in a sport which was dominated by white people. He is still considered one of the best golfers of all time. And I do think that was part of the reason why there was such outrage and why he was punished so severely. Because if you compare his affairs to those of England football players, Wayne Rooney, Ashley Cole, John Terry, obviously I think Ashley Cole got a lot. I mean, all these football players got a lot of smoke for their affairs, especially by the tabloid media, especially Ashley Cole because he cheated on Cheryl Cole, who was like known as like the nation's sweetheart. But not only is football a more racially diverse sport than golf, but cheating can be brushed under the rug a little easier because football does have more of a laddish reputation as a sport. But honestly, circling back to sort of this outrage over affairs, I actually wouldn't be surprised if John Terry's affair received more media coverage than his racist abuse of Anton Ferdinand, which he was prosecuted for, by the way. But obviously, I don't know. That's just a theory. But if we just stay on this trail of thought for a second, I am about to present I guess it's a theory, a thought of mine that I would love to know you guys' thoughts on, because I do think it is true. If we stay on this topic, on this trail of thought of the public outrage over cheating being so palpable, is that I would argue that I do think it is more controversial to cheat on your wife than beat your wife. And I know that sounds crazy. But I have a case study. If we just look at Brad Pitt, his and Angelina Jolie's affair on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith completely broke the media circuit. And I think it's one of those things where like it's difficult to even sort of comprehend it as someone who, if you're my age, I'm 26, I don't remember Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's affair, but when I spoke to my mom about it, she was like, oh my God, Jordan, like it rocked the world. Like it was insane, and I think, the reason why this controversy, although it was really like, shattering at the time, but the reason why they were sort of able to shake it off was because they stayed together for a really long time. I saw Josh from Tell the Bees a lot on my podcast because I really love his TikToks and I love his Substack. But over on his TikTok, he has a series called American Cheating, where he talks about, it's basically his theory that cheating is sort of condoned and it's seen as okay if the couple who had the affair stay together. And a lot of how the media and PR helps try and rehabilitate their image and rehabilitate the way that they met in sort of this like star-crossed lovers romantic story. So that's probably the reason why they were able to shake it off, was because they stayed together for so long. But if we compare the controversy of Brad Pitt's affair to his recent allegations of domestic violence against Angelina Jolie, which people are very easily brushing under the rug, I think that we should consider that most of his children have changed their last names and no longer speak to him. This topic is another conversation for another day, but I do think there is a lot to answer for self-help language and discussions of addiction being used to sideline the abuse of women, which is what I believe is currently unfolding with Brad Pitt. So this is why I wholeheartedly believe that it is, as a public figure, more controversial to cheat on your wife than beat your wife, is because we just have Brad Pitt as a case study for this, case in point. But we are going to circle back and sort of pick apart this, theory a little more in just a moment in this episode. But I still want to explore, our public fascination with affairs and cheating. And I think maybe this is more of a recent phenomenon, because I will say that I do believe that I don't want to say in real life, but like in our personal lives, women do pay a more of a social price for having affairs or cheating than men. But I will say, within sort of the public realm and public figures and celebrities, I do actually think that currently, and, as I'm recording this episode, it is the year of 2025. It does seem that men and women do seem to get equal amounts of shit for cheating. And it hasn't always been this way. I think, amongst celebrities and public figures and also in real life as well. But I do still think that, that misogyny still reigns supreme in our personal lives. But I do think there has been a long history of the mistress who has no loyalties in the situation getting more shit than the married man she is having the affair with. But nowadays, and this is just my theories, and I'd love to know what you guys think. Please let me know if you think I'm wrong. I'm more than happy to listen. But it does seem that whoever is the more famous party is the person who gets shamed the most for having the affair. It seems. So out of Ariana Grande and Ethan Slater, Ariana Grande is the one who's getting most outrage. There probably is a misogynistic element for sure. But also, Ariana Grande is significantly more famous than Ethan Slater. But then if we look at, John Mulaney and Olivia Munn, again, I wasn't really in this when this was all unfolding. But it does seem that John Mulaney gets more shit than Olivia Munn. If we look at the Try Guys, Ned got far more smoke than the woman he had the affair with. I don't even remember what her name is. But what I will say is, as we all know, does any situation or life event unfold without misogyny somehow worming its way in there? No, misogyny. But I do believe that the type of shaming differs between men and women. So men are shamed, and I have to say this, I'm not condoning affairs, I'm not condoning cheating, I'm just, exploring it sociologically. But men are shamed on the basis, my theory is that men are shamed on the basis of betraying their partner. Meanwhile, women's shaming is more rooted in the sexual element of the affair. And there always seems to be, when women are shamed for, having affairs or being the other woman or cheating, there always seems to be this edge of slut shaming, which is absent from when a man has an affair. And although this shaming of cheating has always existed, and this public fascination with cheating has always existed. If we look at our case studies of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, Ethan Hawke, the TV show Cheaters, Tiger Woods, this is nothing new. But I will say it feels particularly amplified now. And obviously part of this is because people are taking more of a rigid stance against cheating in their own lives. As I mentioned earlier, a lot more people now compared to 20 or 30 years ago would never take back a partner if they cheated, or at least they say they wouldn't. You don't really know unless you're in that situation. But also I do think social media does sort of exacerbate this amplification, because we can just read and listen to more people's opinions than ever before. And it's interesting because our attitudes towards cheating have hardened despite, as a society, we are growing more and more liberal. Isn't that interesting? Maybe it does represent, this sort of swing into conservatism that is currently happening, which I've discussed multiple times, and so many of my peers have also discussed this as well. And, maybe these conservative values that we hold in our romantic relationships manifest in our averse feelings towards polyamory and open relationships. This is something which I find really, really interesting. And this is going to be something which I am going to save, discussing polyamory and open relationships for a different podcast episode, because, oh my God, there is so much to unpack there. But, 1 in 5 people will have an affair in their lifetime. But we occupy a really hypocritical space of judging those who are consensually non-monogamous, but continuing to be non-monogamous ourselves. And again, this isn't me saying that every single person that's listening to this is going to be non-monogamous, or that I've been non-monogamous, but rather as a society, as I've said, 1 in 5 people will have an affair. That doesn't even include people that cheat. So, we occupy such a, as a society, we're occupying such a hypocritical space where, we are being very judgmental and very critical of people who are consensually non-monogamous, but we continue to be non-monogamous ourselves. But it's just in secret, it's just behind closed doors. As a society, as we've explored in this episode, we hate cheating. We hate cheaters. We hate people that have affairs. But we don't hate cheating or affairs enough to explore alternatives to lifelong monogamy. Lifelong monogamy at the moment seems pretty unrealistic when looking at human sexual behavior. And the first step to halting behavior which we find hurtful, like cheating, like having affairs, is to try and get to the root of why. But because affairs and cheating carry such a stigma, such a social stigma stigma, such a taboo, that we choose to shame people over getting to the root cause of why. And this is something which Juliet Rosenfeld attempts to answer in her book Affairs, which I read to research for this podcast episode. Let me grab my copy. I read this book, Affairs by Juliet Rosenfeld, True Stories of Love, Lies, Hope, and Desire, for this episode. And in this book, Juliet basically tells the story of, I believe it's 5 different affairs. And I will say that my review of this book is, before getting into it, with this episode, I wanted to explore, affairs from a sociological perspective. I've always been more of a sociology girl over a psychology girl. I think we all gauge that from my videos. This book is very, very psychoanalytical. Like, it is all of these affairs from a psychoanalytical perspective. Juliet Rosenfeld is a psychotherapist. Everything ties back to the upbringing of these people who have affairs, their childhoods, the relationship with their parents, the relationship with their siblings, which, look, it's interesting. And I will say I do appreciate that this book, it does humanize those who have affairs. Also, with the first affair, it really humanizes the mistresses as well. In Affair 2, which is an affair about a psychotherapist who has an affair with one of her patients, Rosenfeld rightly, states over and over again the gravity of the situation, because I think as a reader, as someone who is, I am in therapy myself, but obviously I don't work in the psychotherapy industry. You don't really understand the severity of someone who has an affair with a patient. And I think that Juliet very rightly, over and over again, reaffirms the severity of the situation and how having an affair with your patient is the highest ethical violation that a psychotherapist can do, basically. In Affairs 2 and 3, she discusses how emotional neglect and abuse in relationships can drive people to have affairs. So it's interesting. I'm glad that I read it, but this book really lost me at Affair 4. So, Affair 4 is about an affair between 2 women, Kate and Linda. Linda was married to a woman, Kate was married to a man. And this is the thing, is that this chapter could have and it does discuss the misogyny that especially Kate experienced leaving her husband for a woman. This is what what this book should have been about. But this chapter and the discussion of this affair totally lost me with how biased the writing was towards Kate and Linda. And look, I understand that this book is supposed to be from the perspective of those who have had the affair. I totally understand. But the way that Juliet Rosenfeld writes about Linda's wife, Jazz, boiled my fucking piss. I'm so sorry. So the story of Linda and Jazz, so they're married and they have a child together, and their daughter Mabel, has severe autism. Linda works, meanwhile Jazz is a stay-at-home mum and is a full-time caretaker for Mabel. And I just find that the way that Jazz was written was so demonizing, and it didn't feel very fair at all. I don't think it considered her perspective of not only being basically the sole caretaker for their severely autistic daughter, but also having your partner have an affair and leave you. This chapter just totally demonized Jazz and made her out to basically, she was written as if she's a fucking nag. That's the only way I can describe it. She was written like she was really unreasonable and irrational and aggressive and angry. And this is the thing, is that not once does this book even consider why Jazz is angry. It just paints her as an angry, bitter wife. And that's something that really bored my piss, and in turn felt very misogynistic. And this is the thing, already when I was reading this chapter, I was like, I'm not liking this. Something doesn't feel right about this. And then I read this little paragraph, which completely reaffirmed to me why I disliked this chapter so much. So Juliet Rosenfeld writes in this book, the idea had been to share Mabel's care, but it had never ever worked. Mabel seemed to hate everyone, including Jazz, but nevertheless, the only person who could cope was Jazz. And I understand that a lot of people are going to read that and sort of miss what I'm so pissed off about. The sentence that I was annoyed about is Mabel seemed to hate everyone. And I discussed this with someone that I know because I was like, am I being sensitive? Like, why am I so bothered by this? But this feels like a really awful way to write about any child, especially a severely autistic child. Even though Juliet Rosenfeld writes the words seemed to hate everyone, she's still implying that Mabel, a child, hates someone. And like, no 2-year-old child is capable of hating anyone. And again, I just felt like a part of the writing that was trying to basically get us on the side of Kate and Linda, because in my opinion, if you actually look at this, try to remove yourself from this and look at it objectively, what's happened here is that Linda and Jazz had an unhappy marriage. They were struggling to raise, their severely autistic daughter. There was a lot of tension in the relationship. And then Linda moved to Brazil for work and had an affair with one of her colleagues. Like, that's what happened. If you look at that from an objective point of view, it sounds awful, and it is awful. And this is the thing, I'm not sat here trying to demonize Linda and Kate. Like, I will say, I understand, reading this book, you understand why she did what she did, but also it felt like this chapter was so biased towards them, and it was trying to make me like them, when in turn it actually made me dislike them even fucking more. And this is the thing, it's actually really interesting how much of an emotional reaction this draws out of me, but it's more like the writing about Mabel that really draws an emotional reaction out of me, because this is an environment that I grew up in. So I don't understand what it's like to be a parent, but I do understand what it's like to be a child and be raised in an environment like this. And yeah, I remember I discussed this with someone, and they said to me, it was very reckless language to say that a severely autistic child seemed to hate everyone, because it casts judgment. Like, the word hate, it casts a level of judgment. And I just think, I'm like, sorry, Juliet, babes, you're meant to be a fucking psychotherapist. Like, this is absurd. Unfortunately, that's really, really where the book lost me, which is a shame, because there's a lot of things that I found interesting about this book. I think that there are common patterns of behavior found within affairs I found really interesting. So, common behaviors which cropped up over and over again in the chapters is increased sex drive, rationalization patterns, delusion, fantasy. I think it was like 3 out of the 5 people that had affairs believed that they were supposed to be with this other person. And again, I also think this book is useful at exploring behavior without condoning it. This book argues that more often than not, affairs are cries for help. And this is a reality which a lot of us do not want to confront. And I think maybe we don't want to confront this reality because we're afraid about what we'll discover about ourselves. I would recommend this book if you want to look at affairs from a psychoanalytical perspective. But if you want to look at it more from a sociological perspective, I wouldn't recommend. Also, I just think the writing of Juliet's writing of Jazz and Mabel and Linda, I thought was just so inappropriate. I thought it was really reckless, so fucking biased. Like, I didn't love that part. But if you want it from a psychoanalytical perspective, I probably would recommend. So I think the reason why affairs do draw such an emotional and visceral reaction out of us is because it is very easy to empathize with someone who has been cheated on. I think like most people I know have been cheated on. I've been cheated on. So most, especially women that I know, have experienced cheating or some kind of romantic or sexual betrayal. And if we tie this in to why it's more controversial to cheat on your wife than beat your wife, I do actually think part of it is rooted in an empathy problem. There is still such a victim blaming taboo around domestic violence. There are always, when someone experiences domestic violence, there are always questions about, why didn't they just leave? And it is something that people will not understand until they are in an abusive relationship themselves. But if you compare that to cheating, I think it's a lot easier mentally to put yourself in the place of someone that has been cheated on than to put yourself in the place of someone who's experiencing domestic violence and is going back to their partner. But also, cheating and affairs are a direct disruption of the nuclear family unit, which is especially why in conservative spaces, domestic violence is swept under the rug more than if someone leaves their partner for someone else or if someone has an affair. Because, conservatives view leaving your partner as a direct disruption of the nuclear family, which reigns supreme in society, and infidelity withdraws sexual intimacy from, your primary partner, the primary couple, which is another threat to the nuclear family. But also, we can't discuss the moral, societal outrage over cheating without discussing what I have labeled the tomato effect. It should be really, in British lingo, it should be the tomato effect. But whenever I think of tomato, I think of it in like an American accent. Oh my God, my camera cut out. Sorry, Jordan from the future here, just popping in. So the tomato effect is, centuries ago, we used to put those who have wronged in the stocks and throw tomatoes at them because they were deserving of punishment. And because those we were enacting cruelty on had done something bad themselves, we never once have to question our own morals. We get to be cruel and verbally abusive and sometimes even violent, completely free of consequence, because the recipient of this cruelty, quote unquote, deserves it. The moral superiority plays a really large role in the tomato effect, because a lot of these people are punishing this person who has done bad because they believe they are morally superior, they believe they are a better person, and even punishing this person who's done this bad thing, reprimanding this person who does this bad thing, they're asserting to everyone around them, see, I'm not like that. I'm a better person than that. I'm a good person. Nowadays, the stocks of social media, schadenfreude alert, taking pleasure in other people's pain and suffering. A lot of social media users use public figures who have done wrong as vehicles for their own hatred and abuse, using them as punching bags who, again, quote unquote, deserve it. Because if you try to defend them in any way, you will be labeled as someone who is condoning their behavior. Through this podcast episode, I know that I'm going to be labeled as someone, despite the fact that I'm just exploring sociologically our attitudes towards affairs, I'm going to be labeled as someone who is condoning cheating. And remember, a really large factor of the tomato effect, the tomato effect, is the fact that, I'm sending a message to everyone that I am not like that. I would never ever do that, which is why I'm punishing, which is why I am reprimanding that person for cheating on their partner. And again, as I've said, this is why this, kind of attitude, it makes discussions around cheating and affairs really difficult because, as I said earlier, social media is a place where nuance goes to die. So, if you try to discuss anything about cheating or affairs openly, you will be labeled as someone who is condoning cheating and will, you're going to cheat on your partner. Blah, 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 blah. But I also think that social media has exacerbated this moral outrage even more because of how it facilitates parasocial relationships and the building of parasocial relationships. It is far easier to build a parasocial relationship with the help of social media. Having constant access and, communication with this person. And the Try Guys is a perfect case study of this. I think, I believe the outrage over the Try Guys affair was rooted in the audience feeling betrayed by Ned. It wasn't even rooted in Ned betraying his wife per se. It was more the audience felt betrayed by him, and especially because this affair really went against his personal branding, which was being a wife guy. I also think that a lot of our public fascination with infidelity is rooted in the fact that, when infidelity unfolds, when a scandal unfolds in front of our very eyes, it is a private matter which is being handled publicly, which is very taboo, which obviously draws a lot of attention and fascination. I think the psychology of scandal plays into this as well. Having something really taboo, really private, unfold publicly, it does just scratch a little itch in our brains and it does just leave us wanting more. Affairs and cheating, they seem to have such lasting power on social media and really tend to follow these public figures around, especially if you compare this to when an affair happens in your personal life. When an affair happens in your personal life, like, when a friend of yours, their partner's had an affair, etc., the loved ones move on. But when an affair happens with a public figure, the internet does not. The loved ones move on, the internet doesn't. You know, memories fade, but the internet is forever. And I wouldn't be surprised that if some people who, you know, have been married to public figures and these public figures or celebrities have gone and cheated on them and had affairs, if they must find it a lot harder to move on because, you know, they can just scroll on social media, they can just, you know, read through articles, etc., and re-experience that pain over and over and over again. And I can imagine that makes it really, really difficult to move on. Then if you compare it to real life, where your memory does just fade, like the human body is built to forget pain as a defense mechanism, because if we remembered all the pain that we went through, we would never like do anything again. You know, whether that's physical pain like childbirth or emotional pain like a really bad breakup, your body and brain is built to forget pain as soon as possible. But with the internet and the fact that everything lasts forever, I can imagine that if you're someone who you were married to a celebrity or you're a celebrity yourself, it must be so much harder to move on from these things because you can just re-experience and relive via your phone, via your computer over and over and over again. Maybe let's explore a little more. You know, why have our attitudes towards cheating and affairs hardened in the past couple of decades? Well, I read a fascinating, I believe it's a dissertation, an essay, we'll leave it linked down below in the recommended reading. An Everyday Affair, Deciphering the Sociological Significance of Women's Attitudes Towards Infidelity by Jenny Van Hoof. Now, this is brilliant, and Jenny argues a lot of points which I have been thinking about myself for a while. One of these points is the reason why affairs are treated with so much more gravity now than 30 years ago is because our attitudes towards romantic relationships have shifted to placing emphasis on emotional connection, trust, your partner being your best friend. Therefore, the betrayal of cheating hurts so much more. And I know I discussed this a lot, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't trust our partners. I'm saying that us having higher expectations of our partners is good. Us being harsher when it comes to cheating is good, net positive. But also, you know, I've discussed, you know, Sean Fay discussed this in Love in Exile. We do expect what we were supposed to get from a community from one singular person, which is why so many relationships fail. But that's actually totally separate from what I'm discussing about affairs, and maybe I'll cut that point out. But Van Hoof raises an interesting point about the word infidelity only being reserved for sexual acts. So like if your partner lies to you about your finances, it is not labeled as infidelity. But if your partner lies about whoever they've slept with, it is labeled as infidelity. That's really interesting. I'll leave it linked down below so you guys can read it. It's really, really good. Like I was really, really impressed. But this has been a really long episode. Like my legs are aching. My throat is so sore. I have yapped beyond repair, maybe. But to conclude, maybe we shouldn't be clowning on the polyamory girlies as much. I mean, I'm someone who, I'm not a polyamorous girly. I'm not a non-monogamous girly. I think I'm monogamous, but obviously sexuality changes throughout your lifetime. It ebbs and flows. But, you know, we clown on the polyamorous people. We clown on the ethically non-monogamous people, but maybe they're onto something here. I would love to know you guys' thoughts because I feel like I just unloaded so much information. I fucking love making this episode. You guys know how much I love talking about sex and relationships. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'm really interested to know your thoughts, and I will speak to you soon for the next episode. Bye.